I know.
It's greening off the coffee and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, green.
Sure. Sure. Yep.
See you this morning.
Again?
That
I
was.
didn't. Oh, that's because I get the food for breakfast. He doesn't like getting the food.
Just to order them, he's just like, I know, I was
It's like cake, she owns her own, orders her own, because
Yeah.
I can't order that much sugar anyway.
Yours is a sugar bomb.
I don't know how much
It's like probably $10.
Wanted to hear my brother-in-law's going back to Pikes Peak.
She's with that business manager.
I was trying to remember his relationship with his
My
brother-in-law.
brother-in-law, yeah.
So
My
when
John's
is he
sister
doing
is
that in,
September.
yeah, right, probably because he wants to qualify for Mount Washington.
All I know is we're like, how's the life insurance?
I don't know how he does it, because, like I said, we're the same age, except he'll be 71 in November. And I can't keep up with this.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First, or second item, I guess, on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
That motion.
Got it from Ed, second from Judy. Any comments, changes, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Next item on the agenda, Twin Shores Properties. This is for a zone change recommendation to the town board. Is there somebody that would like to speak on behalf of the applicant?
I would love it.
Very good, thank you.
Tom Studio. We've been here before. Nice to see everyone again. Pretty, I guess, not much of a legal issue here. We're here for a referral, a recommendation back to the town board, positive recommendation for zone change. As you know, we were in front of the town board. We were successful in our initial zone change. We came back to this board for some ideas. This board made a recommendation that that area should be R5. We went back to town board to discuss that. They were happy with your suggestions and they're in favor of it, and go back here for the referral back. So as a, from my perspective, as a legal matter, pretty straightforward, just a referral back to the town board. One other thing we changed, Joe, I guess you want to pull one of those up, we added. So the R5 was, that was, I guess, an easy fix for us. That was your recommendation, so we did it. We added one more little part of, I think if you look at the right part of your map, where the CA extends up a little bit.
Tom, if you could just clarify one thing.
Yep.
We haven't made a recommendation for the R5 yet.
Right. Well, at the last meeting, I guess it was a suggestion.
It was, yes,
Yeah,
I agree.
suggestion, right.
And I guess just so that we're all on the same page, what is the plan that is before us tonight? Looking for,
Look, we're looking for you to send it.
right, but I've got so many plans here.
Yeah.
Just so that we're all on the same page, we understand what we're looking at. What is the date, the plan number, and so on? So if we make a recommendation, we can make it based on that plan.
That's a good question.
So.
Yeah.
The date on this plan, is
7/18/22.
this is the one we submitted originally. To go through the rezone process. After basically the recommendation was to change it to R5.
Right.
So what this shows.
The suggestion.
Suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
So just, this is the existing right now as we stand. CA along Burdick Street and RA on the interior.
Right.
Beautiful. I can
Yeah.
tell, all right, so just to carry on that thought, at the suggestion of the board and in our public discussions, this was suggested to go to R5, multi-unit residential.
Okay,
CA is expanded in all the parcels, there's no cross zoning across proposed parcels, right? The subdivision plan, everything per the recommendations from county planning and the planning board, and the town board, was to basically set the parcels, match the zoning up, so there's nothing to across the parcel lines, so that's what we've done.
so what you're saying is that the CA that's proposed here does not cross any parcel lines?
Proposed parcel lines.
Proposed, okay, all right.
That's correct.
Proposed parcel lines, like you're going to redraw them,
Yes.
You gotta re-subdivide.
so we,
Yeah.
they still need to come back here.
Right.
Right. And that's how it's shown up here.
That's
on the
correct.
board.
That's okay, because.
This is the CA parcel, yellow and the purple.
Yeah.
That's R5. Everything on the outside is all right.
I think, is that because the CA on the we're proposing R5 was CA?
Well-
That was changed to CA, and then
It's back to
it's
R5.
back to R5, and SAPCA, I think, also recommended that, if I'm not
Right,
mistaken.
well, it's what they're asking. for.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
and part of, yes, and that's what SACO recommended on their original
right.
review.
And we thought maybe, or you thought the CA qualified under multi-fam, R5, but it really did, I think is what you. So that's why you came back to us, right, to them, yeah, okay, all right. I just wanted clarification.
Yeah, we've got several plans here
Sure.
that you've given us. I just want to make sure, I wrote some notes down, that this is simply a recommendation to the town board, a zone change.
Correct.
We're not approving any kind of buildings,
Absolutely not.
structures, roadways,
Correct.
signs,
Right.
all the things that are on other plans.
Yep.
We are not,
Absolutely
Okay,
correct. And
all right.
once you find the purchaser to build whatever it is that they're gonna build there, they, in conjunction with us, will be back for your approval of whatever they're gonna build.
Okay.
So yes, we will be back here more than once.
someone will.
Yes, so that's right, that's right.
Do we have any questions from the board?
Well, that cleared up what I was wondering, so thank you.
We're good. Do we want to entertain a motion to do something?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we consider changing this to R5, so.
So we're going to make a recommendation to town board.
Yep.
To do what they have on a plan dated 7/18/2022,
Yep.
ZN-1, that is the plan.
Yep.
That's the motion. All in favor?
All
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
We'll come back to the third point.
Thanks, Joe.
Wait to try.
That's what happens.
Yeah. Something.
It's about time, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a recommendation for zone change for 7 Pines project. Somebody here to discuss.
The architect is not here yet, he just texted it.
Oh. It can be surprising.
Yeah.
Is there expected time of arrival?
That's what I'm gonna try to find out right now.
Okay.
Fast.
Which is fast.
Yeah.
Yes, for a motion or something, to
To
do something.
I don't
Like
have to waste
said,
time.
I have a motion to do something.
Gonna break Joe's record or something.
Did everybody get the response to Doug's email
Yes.
from Lisa? Okay, so we've had a chance to see that. There's still some open issues in that. But again, that would be I think most of them would be more for it. It was an email from Lisa, no, from James Middle on July 19th
Oh,
to
got it right
Lisa
here.
Doug.
We got it.
All right, good.
Yeah.
There's still some open issues on that I think we would look at the site plan review time, not necessarily the recommendation for the zone change. But we got some good responses, I think.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, but I'll wait.
So yeah, I guess we got,
I do have a question for Doug, but I probably should stop
Let
it.
That's not our expectation. So apparently he's not gonna be there. I don't know if there's some presentation he was going to give or not, but there's some sort of recommendation for change
well,
in the zoning, so I'm not.
yeah, the request of this board was to make a recommendation to the town board for zone change. There is CA and RA, if I'm doing this from memory, somebody speak up if I'm not, and they wanted to go to RM. And we did a substantial amount of research on whether or not RM makes sense based on what's there now and what they want to do. And I think it's clear, in my opinion, it was clear, and I can read some things out of our code, that it makes sense. It'd be nice if somebody was here from the developer, from the owner.
Well, we represent the property owner, we just weren't.
Well,
We thought Jim was gonna do that.
if you would like to speak to us and explain what you're trying to do, that might,
What they're trying to do
And
is-
who you are?
Yeah, sorry, my name is Jeff Foster. Sure. My name is Jeff Foster, we work for the owner. He bought 7 Pines Office Park last fall.
Yes.
Last fall. He decided that instead of keeping it all commercial, that he wanted to convert some of it to apartments, because he felt he had a better opportunity to lease space. So he spoke with Jim Niddle. Jim Niddle says, yes, we can make this work. So his intent is to convert the top floor of these office buildings to residential. I think the total number between the 4 buildings is 13 apartments.
I don't know if you gave that as, they do show the number of buildings, but not how many apartments. I think, unless I'm not.
I think we can. Yeah, 'cause
I
I
believe
think
there's 3 buildings that are about 5,000 feet and 1 building that is 10,000. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe, I'm Jackie Straight, I'm the property manager. And from what I understood, that 2 of the buildings would have 3 apartments in them. And 2 of them would have 4.
Yeah, I think
Based on
So
different
that's
sizes.
it's something like that, and they're not all 4 unit buildings, some will be 3. And actually, I probably have misspoken, I think one of them they may keep as 2, like an upstairs and a downstairs.
So how many square feet in each apartment?
we have
I think
the
it's somewhere, so the 5,000 square foot buildings are about 2,500 square feet each. If you take out some of the common area space, you're probably talking around 1,000, maybe slightly less than 1,000 square feet, give or take, depending on how that specific layout allows, for a different shaped apartment.
So there may be residential on the first floor also.
I think eventually he would like to go to that, but that's not what he's looking to do right now, because he's got commercial tenants on the first floors. So he has an obligation to those tenants too.
Does he want to keep some of them still commercial?
Well, I know at this point we have signed, renewed some leases, so I know there is some fresh leases on there, so I don't expect them to be leaving anytime too soon. So I think, eventually you'd like to do that in the long run, but I just want to make now, there's only one building that is pretty much fully empty, and the other one is just the upstairs that's empty. So I think that he would like to eventually start by doing that, the upstairs.
So if he's got good commercial tenants paying, it doesn't make sense to spend all this money to reconfigure all these. But if he's having trouble with leasing down the road, residential is a good way to go because you can replace tenants in one faster. It's just more of a.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's good. It makes sense. Question for you on, it's tax parcel 112.02.028, which is lot 1A, which is the front parcel that I do not believe he controls at this
That
point.
is correct.
Does he have an option on that? Does he have?
Not that I'm aware of.
So there's, right now, he's got no control over that at all.
That's correct.
Valerie, you said you had a question for Doug or wanted to discuss something.
I had some questions about the parking, but it may be a moot point if the number of apartments are undecided. I was going by what they sent us before with the floor plans. It looked to me like there was 3 units in 3 buildings and 4 in 1 based on the parking. And on the zoning for that, Doug had said 1 space for every 200 square feet, and the response was they believe the offices would be 1 for 300. If it's 1 for 200, that's a lot more parking than what's there. So that was one of my questions. And then the other I had for Doug is you said no more than 2 uses under the RM without previous consent. And so my understanding, if it's correct, would be that this board can grant more the accessory permit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so those are my 2 questions.
And I think this being a recommendation for a zone change is a little bit different than an approval of a site plan, which we get into more of the details of.
Well, because those were
What are the
that's
square
under the
footage?
RM zoning though. So
Right, but no, we would get into that once we determined exactly what they were going to do with apartments and office space and so on with each building. The one thing I'd just like to read this because Jamie, Doug, and I have spent a little bit of time looking at this, and some of our concerns were the lots weren't all 40,000 square feet, which is required under RM.
Right.
The lot coverage in 2 of the lots, I think, exceeds the 35%. There's no road frontage. There's some issues that we had with going to RM because it would be not in compliance with our code. However, in section, I can read this this is 155.20D, area and dimensional requirements. All buildings, structures, or uses properly permitted at the time this amendment is effective shall be deemed legal, non-conforming structures and uses as set forth in Article 5 of this chapter. All building or structures hereafter erected or structurally altered shall meet the following. So in other words, since these, the way I read it, since these things exist, they do not have to follow some of the criteria of the RM code, which helps us as we determine what we're going to do
that
with
was
it.
my other question. I had legal non-conforming
Yeah,
structures
well,
right here.
I think we're good. And I'm not sure if you can answer this question, but it's a question I have. And I'm looking at this plan. I don't know if you guys have these plans.
I've seen, is that just an existing site plan?
Yes.
I think I've seen it, yeah.
I'm just curious, as I look at this, there's very bold outlines of the parcel lines, except for 3B. I don't know why that is. I would think that there'd be a very bold line here, a very bold line there. It's non-existent. What does that tell me?
Where's that the parcel?
1A is out front. This is behind 1A. It's 3B.
I'm not sure how to answer that question, but I can.
All right, that would be, I would have a question for the architect or whoever is doing this, is why that's like that.
It should be corrected before it goes back to the town board and to be sure.
Before before we can make a recommendation.
No, I mean, I think we can make the recommendation, but the recommendation would include, we recommend that you fix that line.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Do we have a list of what businesses are in there already? To just,
There's-
to check that they would make, that they would
Oh,
make.
yeah.
There is,
Next
there
door,
is,
there's-
right,
There's what?
Blaze next door, there is a dentist in the building straight ahead. To the building on the right, there is an architect. And
How I speak.
right, and then up and to the left, the two buildings, there's Metis Group. And there's first building is, yes, the optometrist.
I got you, yeah. And I'm just speaking as one person on this committee here, but I don't feel comfortable in doing something now because I think there's some unanswered questions. I don't know how other people feel on the board.
What's your unanswered question?
I want to know why there's not dark lines on this. Does he control does he own all the buildings
Everything except the empty part.
except the front parcel?
Right, the empty parcel.
Does he have any desire to buy that parcel?
I don't know the answer to that question. That conversation.
I do know he would eventually like to buy it, but I don't believe it's an option right now. As far as I don't know if it's on the table to be purchased.
What's it used for now?
Nothing, it's just grass land.
Oh,
They're marketing it as like development.
Rich, are you concerned whether to include that in the zone change?
Yes, that's one of the things is that lot 1A, I think if we're gonna
Yeah.
change this to RM, that should be changed to RM.
Oh, I
That would be
see.
a recommendation that
I would,
I would
that
consider.
would make sense to me.
It would.
Well,
Because-
remember, right now, that piece, that 1A
Yeah.
is
CA.
CA, which is, like, you could have, you know,
McDonald's.
McDonald's or,
Yeah.
not, no offense to McDonald's.
No,
be a
no,
Big
I know.
Mac,
But you
you
could
know.
drive fast food drive-through, you could have, other things there.
I thought it was
And if we make a recommendation to do this RM, we should also recommend that, again, that's my opinion. I mean, there's other people on the board that may have different opinions,
But even though he doesn't own that property,
even though he doesn't own
I
it.
would include that.
That would be a recommendation that I would entertain.
Well, it would seem inappropriate to have CA in front of residential.
Right. You'd almost have to make it all RM, I would think.
So,
Can we do that without the?
yes.
Just so you know, something could have changed this purchase, like was last fall, and I may not know that yet, but I believe it was Paul Reagan that owned it prior to them, or the Reagan family, and I know they owned it, so that could have happened since then, and I am not aware. We're not obviously doing anything with the property because it's just land at this point.
It's vacant.
Exactly.
How long's it been vacant? I'm just curious.
Always.
Long time.
Ever.
It's never been developed, right?
Well,
I just have a problem if we make a recommendation to rezone this, that we don't recommend to rezone that. Town board may think differently, but that's,
I agree with you on that, Rich. I think that if we made the recommendation, go RM, send it back to the town board, see what they determine.
it's their decision.
On that one section, it's really.
Yeah, well, it's their decision on the whole thing.
Yeah, right. Lot B, 3B.
Also, we had some historical information about what this used to be, right?
Right, as Ann said, at our last meeting, these were dorms
Mhm.
at one time, so they were residential. And so basically, we're going back to what they were.
Right.
And the RM zone seems to fit for what they're looking at doing. I mean, I just think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, it does, especially since there's businesses in there right now.
And we're keeping the residential character of it too.
Yeah. You want to,
I guess I'd entertain any kind of,
Right, and just a reminder that if the zone is changed and they do end up putting residential component in here, there has to be site plan and accessory use.
accessory use permit.
So it'll come back. to
It'll come
us.
back, right?
okay,
But a lot of this would probably be unchanged because of that pre-existing non-conforming status.
Mhm.
So we wouldn't have to we wouldn't be creating a situation where you're creating all kinds of nonconformities.
And there's also the issues of cross easements and so on for access, ingress and egress.
Oh, yeah, right.
That we have to look into and make sure they're all in place. But this is simply, does it make sense to recommend a zone change to RM to give them the ability to have residential
Yeah.
second floor, whatever they want to
And
do.
there's a lot of RM up through that corridor
It's all
anyway.
correct.
you know, So it does fit the current.
Right.
Rich, I recommend that we create an RM zone for this property, recommend that to the town.
Is
Do
that,
we want to put some, I think in the recommendations, the town board likes to maybe have some reasons. And also, do you want to include that lot? in the recommendation?
1A that is not part of this? Okay.
It's not owned by this applicant.
That's the motion with the caveats of
Can you
Yeah,
go
and I-
ahead though and change the lot, even if we don't own it?
Oh, the town board can change it. They just need to send a notice out to
Right.
the owner and they want to show up at the public hearing and complain about it.
Mm.
They can do that, but
So they could
Since
change
it's
the value of
undeveloped.
a piece of property like
Yeah.
that. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. I mean, you know, it's okay.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
they
since it's, is it because it's undeveloped, like if there was already,
you still could change it. Town board, it's a legislative function. It's legislation, and they can do it. So, now, whether politically or any other reason they would not is a whole other thing, but
And they may not accept our recommendation and say, well, we understand the rest of it, we're not changing that. I don't know what they're gonna say, but just
But-
looking at the map, looking at the plan, looking at the area, it
right?
would make sense to make that RM.
and also maybe inappropriate to keep it the CA.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think that's even more
Yep.
out there.
Well, I'll second her.
Better for the property.
And I think we could add to it that, we're keeping as RM is, we're keeping the residential characteristics of this area. And that's why I think it's a good move.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good move. I was just wondering about that lot.
I understand. I mean, I have some
Yeah,
concern.
yeah.
Oh, also you want to add to the recommendation that the town board delineate the lot lines.
Yeah, lot 3B, make sure that we know exactly what the lot lines are.
Got all that, Lisa?
Pardon?
She does.
That was all in your motion, I heard it.
And I second all of that.
You got it all?
Got it all.
So we got a motion and a second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Very good.
Thank you.
More prepared.
Well, thank
You
you.
did all right. I think.
Good, that's good.
Improv.
Yeah, you
You
win.
were here. That was-
You win.
Even though you showed up.
I have,
Good,
Nice
thank
to
you.
see you, Jim. Thanks so much.
thanks.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Appreciate it.
evening.
I have nothing else on the agenda. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Are you gonna move to adjourn if you're the chairman?
Well, I can't. So I have to have somebody else stand in for me.
Oh, I think Anne.
They can raise their hand.
Did-
Did you, to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Oh, I'll adjourn, yes.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ed. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion